Today I have the distinct pleasure of introducing our next speaker, Andrew Meeks. Andrew is a junior video, television, and film production major. He's been on the team 3 years. Andrew's had a very successful year. He is among our busiest performers. Andrew managed to do 10 different events at the national tournament, and all year long he's been among the busiest competitors, both in speech and debate, on the team. He's also been very successful. He has two first place finishes in poetry, a second place finish in dramatic interpretation, and he also was third in the event personal narrative at the national tournament. So a very prestigious year for him, as well as being part of the winning team at the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency. Today he's going to do an interpretation of literature for you. Students find and select portions of original literature and sort of condense it down to help create a message and hopefully move the audience to an emotion. Andrew's piece today is called Cry for Me. Welcome, Andrew.
Hi, my name's Alex. I'm not from around here. I decided to move to Australia when I was about 19 years old. I thought it'd be fun to travel around the world in alphabetical order, but I stopped when I realized that Austria was going to be next on that list. It might sound funny to all of you guys, but right now my proudest achievement is that I do actually have a job. For the first few months, I was a cleaner and a fruit picker, but that work never lasted. Then one day I came across this ad in the local paper. It looked like a joke, but I decided to call anyway. I spoke to this man named Brian, and after a few minutes speaking with him, I realized that he was legitimate. This job sounded too real. Brian told me that they'd give me a trial run, and I cried with gratitude. He said it was great how much passion I was already showing. My first morning came around, and I went to a funeral. The passing of another is oftentimes one of the most difficult things for anyone in life to go through. Oftentimes, funeral services are seen as the last celebration, the last hurrah of the lives of those we have lost, and emotions are always expected to run high. As the National Funeral Directors Association reports, an estimated 2.4 million funerals occur every year, but despite the increased numbers, the expectations of grief are only continuing to rise as time goes on. But not everyone can meet those expectations. Everyone grieves in different ways. We cannot expect emotions out of someone that they're not comfortable expressing. For his work, Alex is expected to grieve for the lives of those who have been lost, thrust into the lives of those who have passed away. But as we soon see, the emotions he shows are not just for a paycheck. This is Cry for Me by Pete Malicki. Some might say this is a bad way to start a career, but I'm not a superstitious person. The deceased was an elderly woman. It was a small service, so I decided to stand near the end of the second row. I didn't know this woman, and truthfully, I wasn't brought to tears by the fact that some random stranger who I had never met had passed away. But as I looked around the room, there were all these people, and not one person here were crying. I mean, half of them looked bored, like they wanted the service to end early and just go home and see what was playing on the TV. This poor woman, she had been on this earth for 89 years, and not one person here loved her enough to cry. I mean, what's wrong with these people? Surely this woman deserves at least one good sob. She was someone's mom, someone's grandma. I can't imagine what I would do if it was my own darling Nana. And suddenly, tears start to stream down my face. The woman sitting next to me sniffles, and the woman sitting next to her chokes. It doesn't take long before we're all weeping and screaming, "Why, God? Why?" When the service was over, this man with swollen and red eyes came over and gave me a hug. Thank you. Mom asked me on her deathbed that everyone cried for her at her funeral. So thank you, please. I'm going to put a good word in for you with your boss. Brian was very happy with the report from the woman's son, and I passed his quote-unquote test. $200 per funeral they paid me. Oh, don't forget about the travel and the tissue allowance on top of that. Work depended on the clientele, but it was up to 10 per week. Did you know that up to 150,000 people die every day? You'd be surprised how often they decide to hire a crier. The second service I went to was for this middle-aged loner, and truthfully, I was just there to boost the numbers. It was hard to really feel anything, so I thought about how sad it was that after 56 years on the earth, so few people came here to celebrate the end of this man's life. I openly cried in somber despair as the only 3 relatives there just watched me solemnly. Oftentimes I'd turn up late to avoid those "so how did you know them" conversations. It's not easy to find a reason to cry about complete and utter strangers, but I always did, and a friend or a relative who decided to hire Brian's company would go home feeling just a tiny bit happier. But you see, one day I discovered the dangers of my job, though, because you see, they were burying what was objectively one of the best looking guys I had ever seen. And I started as I normally would. Sniffle, sob, and pretend to cough to cover everything up. The tears start flowing, so I wipe my eyes away with a wad of tissues. I openly cry in deep, pitiful despair as this beautiful, amazing person who I had never even met before is just dumped into the earth for good. All of a sudden, this woman has me by the arm and drags me away from the congregation. "So you're the one. You're the one who was seducing him. You've got some nerve showing your face here." "I'm sorry, who are you?" "I'm simply just here to pay my respects." "Oh, everyone here knows Rocco's wife?" She decided to slap me across my face when I corrected her with the word widow as opposed to wife. See, it turns out that Rocco's sister hated her guts, and she hired me to come to the service because she knew her sister-in-law would make an embarrassment of herself and derail the entire service. The next day I was so shocked that I went to the wrong service, cried like I'd never been sad before in my life until I saw the angry text from Brian on my phone. He lectured me. He chastised me until I was able to sob out an apology. He laughed at the irony of that. Things go smoothly for a few months after until this prominent radio commentator dies, and I'm brought in to make it look like he wasn't reviled by the entire country. I often wonder what makes a man hate their fellow man as much as this man did, and how much everyone hated him in turn. And the whole thing makes me so goddamn sad. But before my grief has a chance to even affect the people around me, there's this commotion outside. I try and I keep going, but it gets more commotionary, and I realize that it's protesters. People are so distracted that they can't even mourn. So I get up, and I march outside, and I see 3 rows of angry men and women standing there, holding up signs and chanting. And I look at them, and I say, "He's dead, you idiots!" He didn't listen to a single word you said to him when he was alive, and he's not listening to a single word you're saying to him right now. All you're doing is making it so the friends and relatives of this man can't even grieve, and we have done nothing wrong to you. What you're doing makes you no better a man than he was. So please, Just let us mourn in peace. A few of them looked down in shame. They didn't leave, but they stopped chanting at the very least. I go back inside, take my seat, and the woman sitting next to me just looks up to me with a smile and a nod. A few months later, I get a call from back home. My Nana had died. I got a flight back home as soon as I could, and I was sadder than I imagined a person could ever possibly be. The service was like any other I'd been to in the last year, except there was one big difference. I couldn't cry. Nothing that I could think of, nothing could bring a single tear to my eye. Nothing for the woman I cared about most in this world. Forgive me, Nana. I care about you too much to even think of spoiling our last moments together with unclear eyes. That's what I told myself. But I didn't believe that. When I got back home, I told Brian I couldn't do my job anymore. He wrote me this beautiful reference, but he said he'd only give it to me if I went to one more service. But I can't cry. I'm sure you can, and I'll still give it to you even if you don't cry. So I went, and the second that service started, I gushed like a broken water main. All I could think about was how ashamed I was to have not cried for my Nana. I mean, what was wrong with me that I could cry for complete and utter strangers, but not the woman who I cared about most in this world? Brian gave me an extra 10% commission on top of my fee, and I kept my job. Every funeral that I go to is for my Nana, and every tear that I shed is for her. Okay, I'm due for my next appointment now. Thank you, Nana, for the life that you've given me. I miss you, and I will cry for you again soon. I will cry for you every day, sometimes 3 or 4 times. So thank you, Nana. Thank you.